Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a knife, it's the truth about your own family. The words echoed in my mind as I stood at the departure gate, my boarding pass clutched in one trembling hand, my suitcase handle gripped in the other. The excitement of the long-awaited family trip still buzzed in the air around me, but inside, I felt nothing but an eerie stillness. Something was off, I just didn't know what yet. My parents had planned this trip for months, insisting it would be a special getaway just for the adults, a way to reconnect as a family without the distractions of kids running around. As much as it pained me to leave my two little ones behind, I had agreed. After all, they'd reassured me 100 times. "Becca, you deserve a break," Mom had said, her voice firm but affectionate. "The kids will be fine with Nathan. Just enjoy yourself for once." So I had arranged everything, stocked the fridge, left detailed instructions, even video called my babies twice before heading to the airport. I was ready to embrace this rare opportunity to be Becca again, not just Mom. The thought of a peaceful adult vacation had almost made me forget the years of subtle favoritism, the small cuts that had slowly bled my self-worth dry. But then she walked in. Ashley. And right behind her, trailing in a chaotic line were her 3 children, their designer backpacks swinging wildly, sticky fingers gripping overpriced snacks, tiny voices excitedly chattering about the upcoming vacation. My stomach tightened as I took in the sight. Hadn't we agreed on adults only? I turned to my parents, confusion written across my face. "Oh Becca, don't look so surprised," Mom said, waving dismissively as if I was making a fuss over nothing. Dad chuckled beside her, that familiar patronizing laugh that had always made me feel small. "It's different with Ashley's kids. They're no trouble at all." "No trouble?" I stared at Ashley's youngest, Max, who was already climbing onto an airport seat like it was a jungle gym, giggling as he tried to jump off. The same behavior that would have earned my children stern lectures about discipline and respect. Ashley must have noticed my expression because she let out a soft laugh. "Relax, Beck. My kids are angels. You won't even notice they're here." That's when Mom said it. The words that sent an ice-cold shiver down my spine, "We just love them more." At first, I thought I'd misheard. Surely she hadn't just said that. But then she smiled, her eyes twinkling like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it wasn't a knife to my chest. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "Excuse me." She sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, Becca. We just mean they are, well, they're easier. They listen. They're more." She hesitated, then gestured vaguely. "You know, lovable." Lovable. The word hit me like a physical blow. My mind flashed back to my children, my sweet, bright, beautiful babies who were at home right now, probably wondering why Mommy had to leave without them. Ashley's kids weren't more lovable. They weren't more deserving. They were just the favorite grandchildren, and my kids weren't even worth a plane ticket. "You lied to me," I said, my voice steady but only just. Dad let out a tired sigh. "Becca, don't be dramatic. You know how hard Ashley has it, single mom, 3 kids. She needed this more than you," Mom added, as if that explained everything. I looked at Ashley, waiting for her to say something, anything, to acknowledge how messed up this was. But she just shrugged, completely unbothered, as if she had every right to be here with her children while mine were left behind. That was the moment it hit me, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a choice. A deliberate choice to prioritize Ashley and her children over me and mine. A choice that they never even considered explaining or apologizing for. I clenched my jaw and took a slow breath. This was the moment I knew things would never be the same again. I had spent years making excuses for them, convincing myself that the favoritism was just in my head, that I was imagining things. But now it was undeniable. And I had a choice to make, be the quiet, obedient daughter they expected me to be, or finally stand up for myself and my children. I glanced at my boarding pass, then at my family, then back at my boarding pass. A lifetime of memories flashed through my mind, Christmas mornings where Ashley's kids got expensive gifts while mine got bargain store toys, family dinners where my parents fawned over her children while barely acknowledging mine, countless moments where I was made to feel less than, unworthy, unloved. They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I stood there, gripping my suitcase so tightly my knuckles turned white. The hum of the airport around me faded into a dull buzz as my parents and Ashley continued chatting, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "Becca, don't be so dramatic," Mom sighed again, waving a dismissive hand. "You're acting like we left your kids on the street. They're at home, perfectly safe." My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "That's not the point." Dad shook his head, already exasperated, as if I was the one making things difficult. "Becca, we just thought it would be easier this way. You're always so stressed with the kids. We figured you'd enjoy yourself more without them." I let out a hollow laugh, the kind that escapes when you're 1 second away from losing control. "Oh right, so you were doing me a favor, is that it?" I glanced at Ashley, who was flipping through her phone like she wasn't part of this conversation. "And Ashley? You figured she wouldn't mind bringing hers." Mom shifted uncomfortably, finally sensing that I wasn't just annoyed, I was furious. "You know how hard things are for her, sweetie," she said, lowering her voice like she was talking to a child. "3 kids, no father around, she needed this more than you did." There it was again. That phrase. She needed this more than you. I could almost feel something inside me snap. The truth hit me with crushing clarity, I would never be enough for them. My children would never be enough for them. And it was time to stop trying. "You keep saying that," I said, my voice rising now as people started to glance over, sensing the tension. "What about me? What about what I need? Or does that not matter because I'm not your struggling, helpless daughter?" Mom's eyes widened, and Dad's expression hardened. "Becca, lower your voice." "No." I stepped forward, my heart hammering. "You lied to me. You looked me in the eyes and told me this trip was adults only. You knew I'd never leave my kids behind if I had the choice. You knew, and you didn't care." Ashley finally looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes. "God, Becca, just let it go. It's a vacation, not the end of the world." That was it. That was the final straw. I exhaled sharply, gripping the handle of my suitcase. I wasn't going on this trip. Not with them. Not anymore. "Enjoy your vacation," I said, my voice steady, controlled, deadly. I turned on my heel and started walking toward the exit. Mom gasped. "Becca, don't be ridiculous. Where are you going?" "The flight is boarding soon." "Not for me," I called over my shoulder. "Becca." Dad's voice was sharper now, angrier. "Don't you dare act like a child over this." That made me stop. Slowly, I turned around, meeting his gaze head-on. "Act like a child?" That's rich coming from the people who just told me straight to my face that they love my sister's kids more than mine. Mom paled, looking around nervously. "Becca, honey, we didn't mean it like that." "You meant it exactly like that," I cut her off. "You've always meant it like that. I've just been too stupid to see it." The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley, ever unbothered, sighed dramatically. "Jesus, Becca, stop being so sensitive. My kids are here. What do you want Mom to do, kick them out?" I laughed then, a real bitter laugh. "No, Ashley. I don't want her to kick them out. I just wish for once in my life she thought I was just as important as you are." Mom opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the airport, leaving them behind without another word. I barely remembered the drive back, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I was surprised it didn't snap in half. I felt numb, like I was floating outside my own body, watching the scene replay over and over in my mind. I had spent years bending over backward for my family, letting things slide, making excuses, convincing myself that I was overthinking it. But they had just proven what I had feared all along, I was never going to be enough for them. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a mother. I thought about my babies, sitting at home waiting for me. Waiting for the grandparents who had never prioritized them the way they did Ashley's kids. And suddenly, I knew what had to be done. This wasn't just about the trip. This was about everything. Every holiday where my kids got smaller gifts than Ashley's. Every birthday party where my parents fawned over her children and barely acknowledged mine. Every time I was made to feel like I was less. No more. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my mind was made up. I wasn't just walking away from the trip. I was walking away from them for good. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house where my children were waiting for me. The warmth of home should have made me feel better, but all I could hear were my mother's words, "We just love them more." That one sentence had shattered something inside me, something fragile I'd been trying to hold together for years. My parents had never said it out loud before, but they didn't have to. The favoritism had always been there, lingering just beneath the surface like a wound that never quite healed. I had spent my whole life proving myself, trying to earn the same love and approval that Ashley got effortlessly. And for what? For them to tell me to my face that my children didn't matter as much? I felt my chest tighten. No more. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. As soon as I opened the front door, two small figures came racing toward me. "Mommy." Sophia threw herself into my arms, her curls bouncing as she hugged me tightly. Behind her, Lucas clung to my leg, his little hands squeezing my jeans. "You're back already?" Nathan peeked around the corner, confusion on his face. He had been watching our kids while I was supposed to be on my adults-only trip. "What happened?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I set Sophia down and forced a smile. "I'll explain later." Nathan studied my face, then nodded. He knew me well enough to see that something had shifted, something deep. I turned back to my kids, running my fingers through Sophia's curls. "Did you two have fun?" "We missed you," Lucas pouted, wrapping his arms around my waist. My heart clenched. They deserved better. They deserved grandparents who wanted them there, not ones who saw them as an inconvenience. I kissed the top of Lucas's head, holding him close. "I missed you too, baby. So much." That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in front of me. My mother had called 4 times, my father twice. Ashley, not at all. No surprise there. I ignored the missed calls. Instead, I opened our family group chat, the same chat where my parents constantly gushed over Ashley's kids, the same chat where I had spent years biting my tongue, smiling through the subtle jabs, pretending I didn't notice the imbalance. Not anymore. I started typing, "I won't be coming on the trip, and I won't be part of this family anymore either." I hesitated for a second, then kept going. I've spent my entire life being treated like I was less, like my children were less. Today you made it clear that was never going to change. So I'm done. I read it over, my pulse pounding in my ears. "I hope you enjoy your vacation, but from now on, don't call me, don't text me, and don't expect anything from me ever again." I hit send. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then, one by one, I left every family group chat, blocking my parents' numbers before they had a chance to respond. It was done. I had cut the cord. The next morning, Nathan walked into my kitchen to find me making pancakes, the smell of butter and syrup filling the air. "Okay," he said, crossing his arms. "Spill." I flipped a pancake onto a plate. "I'm done with them." Nathan blinked. "Wait. With your parents?" I nodded. "Whoa. What happened?" I told him everything, the lie, the betrayal, the favoritism that had finally been spoken out loud. By the time I finished, Nathan was gripping his coffee mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Becca," he breathed. "That's awful." I shrugged, trying to play it off. "It's not surprising." "That doesn't make it okay," he snapped. I met his eyes, my throat tightening. "No," I whispered. "It doesn't." Nathan set his mug down. "So what now?" I exhaled. Now I focus on our kids. On our life. I've spent too long chasing their approval. I don't need it anymore." Nathan studied me for a moment, then smiled. "Good. Because you and our kids? You deserve better." "Better." I nodded, my heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my parents to see me, because I finally saw myself. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. At first, there was silence. A whole day passed without a single call or message from my parents or Ashley. I knew they had seen my message. I imagined them sitting in their hotel suite, sipping cocktails, probably rolling their eyes at my dramatic behavior. But I also knew something they didn't. I wasn't bluffing. The second day, my phone started ringing. Mom. I watched it vibrate on the kitchen counter, my stomach tightening, but I didn't answer. An hour later, she tried again. Then twice more that evening. Dad called next, then Ashley, whose name I hadn't seen pop up on my screen in months. I ignored them all. By the third day, the messages started flooding in. Mom, Becca, sweetie, let's be reasonable. You're overreacting. We need to talk. Dad, enough of this nonsense. Call your mother back. Ashley, seriously, Becca? You're actually mad about this? Grow up. I stared at the messages, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Not a single apology. Not one admission that they had done anything wrong. They still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, like I was some child they could scold into submission. By the fourth day, the tone changed. Mom, Becca, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just cut us off. Dad, you're being selfish. Do you know how much we've done for you over the years? And then the one that made me sit up straight, Mom, Becca, your father, and I need help financially. We need to talk. I blinked at the screen, reading the message twice to make sure I hadn't imagined it. There it was, the real reason for the sudden concern. I had expected it to come eventually, but not this soon. They weren't worried about losing me. They were worried about losing my support. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had never seen it clearly before, but now it was blindingly obvious. For years, I had been bending over backward to keep my family happy. I had helped them financially more times than I could count, covering bills, lending money, helping out when they overspent on something unnecessary. I never thought twice about it because, well, that's what family does, right? But looking back, I realized something. They had never once helped me. Not when I struggled as a new mother. Not when I was going through my divorce. Not when I was barely making ends meet. I had been on my own while they showered Ashley with endless help, endless support, endless excuses. And now, when they realized I was serious about walking away, their first instinct wasn't to make things right. It was to guilt trip me into coming back, not because they missed me, but because they needed something from me. That night, as I tucked my kids into bed, I felt something inside me settle. I was done feeling guilty. I picked up my phone, opening the text thread with my mother. I took a deep breath, then typed, "You're right, Mom. I can't just cut you off. I should have done it years ago." I hit send before I could overthink it. A few seconds later, my phone started ringing. Mom. I let it ring. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages. At first, more of the same. Becca, please, let's talk. This isn't how families treat each other. We raised you better than this. But when I didn't respond, the insults started. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. You'll regret this when we're gone. Then the final blow, Dad, fine. If you want to act like you don't have a family, don't come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake. I stared at that message for a long time. A mistake? No. The mistake was thinking they ever cared about me the way I cared about them. I locked my phone, exhaled slowly, and turned my focus to the only people who mattered, my children. That afternoon, Sophia came home from school with tears in her eyes. Mommy, why hasn't Grandma called? She always calls on Wednesdays to hear about my dance class. My heart broke. I sat down with her on the couch, pulling her close. Baby, sometimes grown-ups need to take time apart. Even family. She looked up at me with those big innocent eyes. Is it because they don't love us? No, sweetheart, I said, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. It's because sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we have to protect ourselves, even from people we love. Lucas wandered in then, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. I miss Grandpa's silly voices, he said quietly. I pulled him into our hug, fighting back tears. I know, baby. I know. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Nathan came over. We had been getting better at co-parenting since the divorce, but I still wasn't expecting him to show up unannounced. The kids told me about your parents, he said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Want to talk about it? I let out a long breath. There's nothing to talk about. They showed me who they really are, and I finally believed them. Nathan nodded slowly. You know, I never said anything while we were married, but I saw it. The way they treated you compared to Ashley. The way they favored her kids over ours. I looked up, surprised. You did. He smiled sadly. Becca, everyone saw it. We all knew how much you wanted their approval. How hard you tried to earn their love. Well, I laughed bitterly, I'm done trying. Good, he said firmly. Because you never needed to try in the first place. You're an amazing mother, Becca. Our kids are lucky to have you. I felt tears welling up. The kids miss them. Of course they do. But they'll miss them less than they'd hurt watching their mother be treated like she's worthless. His words hit home. He was right. What kind of example was I setting for my children by accepting this treatment? By letting them see their mother and themselves be treated as less than? A week passed, then two. The calls stopped. The messages slowed. Eventually, the silence settled in, and with it came a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their love. I wasn't bending myself into knots trying to be seen. I was just living. And yet, as much as I felt lighter, there was still a part of me that ached. Not for my parents, not for Ashley, but for something else. Or rather, someone else. My kids. One evening, I found Sophia looking through our old family photo album. She stopped on a picture from last Christmas, the one where we were relegated to the edge of the frame while Ashley's family took center stage. Mommy, she asked, her finger tracing the photo. Why do they love Cousin Max more than me? The question felt like a knife to my heart. I sat down beside her, closing the album gently. They don't love him more, sweetheart. They don't know how to love properly. What does that mean? I thought carefully about how to explain it. You know how sometimes when you're drawing, you press too hard with your crayon and it breaks? Or too soft and you can barely see the picture? She nodded. Well, love is kind of like that. Some people don't know how to love the right way. They press too hard in some places and too soft in others. But that's their problem, not yours. She seemed to consider this. Is that why we don't see them anymore? Yes, baby. Because you and Lucas deserve people who know how to love you just right. That night, I lay awake thinking about my children, about the legacy of favoritism and conditional love I had almost let them inherit. I thought about my own childhood, about all the times I had felt less than, unworthy, unloved. The cycle had to stop with me. The next morning, I called my therapist and scheduled an appointment. If I was going to do this, really do this, I needed to heal my own wounds first. My children deserved a mother who wasn't carrying the weight of generational trauma on her shoulders. Days turned into weeks. We developed new routines, new traditions. Instead of waiting for my parents' approval, I focused on building a strong, loving home for my children. Nathan and I became better co-parents, united in our determination to give our kids the stable, loving environment we both wished we'd had. But healing isn't linear. There were still hard days, moments when the hurt felt fresh and raw. Like when Sophia won the lead in her school play, the kind of achievement my parents would have celebrated endlessly if it had been Ashley's kids. Or when Lucas lost his first tooth, and I had to resist the instinct to share the news in the family group chat. But with each passing day, the ache dulled a little more. We created new memories, ones that weren't tainted by favoritism or conditional love. We built our own definition of family, one based on genuine love, respect, and acceptance. 3 weeks after the airport incident, Ashley showed up at my door unannounced. She looked different, less polished, more frazzled. The reality of losing her financial safety net was clearly setting in. "Mom and Dad are a mess," she said without preamble. "This little tantrum of yours is affecting everyone." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "It's not a tantrum, Ashley. It's a boundary." She rolled her eyes, the familiar gesture making my skin crawl. "Come on, Becca. You know how they are. Just apologize so things can go back to normal." "Normal?" I laughed. "You mean where they openly favor your kids over mine? Where they lie to my face? Where they only call when they need money? They're our parents." "No, Ashley. They're your parents. They made that very clear." She stared at me, finally seeming to realize I was serious. "What happens when you need them?" "I've never had them," I said quietly. "Not really. I just didn't want to admit it before." The truth about my family's facade began crumbling faster than anyone expected. 1 month after I cut ties, the first domino fell. Dad's fraudulent business practices were exposed when one of his elderly clients' children, a financial investigator, started asking questions. The carefully constructed house of cards he'd built began to collapse. The news spread quickly through their social circles. Mr. Thompson, the respected real estate mogul, was under investigation for predatory practices and financial fraud. Mom's carefully curated social media empire imploded next. Her defamatory posts about business rivals came back to haunt her as several lawsuits were filed simultaneously. Her thousands of followers watched in real time as her perfectly crafted image shattered. Ashley's benefit fraud was the final blow. An anonymous tip, which I later learned came from one of her bitter ex-boyfriends, led to a full investigation of her claims. The luxurious lifestyle she'd maintained through fraudulent means came to an abrupt end. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling neither joy nor sorrow, just a profound sense of justice being served. "Did you hear?" Nathan asked one evening, showing me a local news article on his phone. "Your dad's company is facing a class action lawsuit." I nodded, helping Lucas with his homework. "They made their choices. Now they're facing the consequences. Mom keeps trying to reach you through mutual friends," he added carefully. "She's saying she needs help with the legal fees." I continued helping Lucas solve his math problem, my voice steady. "Not my problem anymore." The following week, I received a letter from Ashley's lawyer, suggesting I reconsider my position regarding family support. I handed it directly to my own attorney without opening it. Meanwhile, my life was transforming in ways I never expected. Freed from the constant drain of toxic family obligations, I flourished. My law practice expanded, focusing on helping victims of financial fraud, a choice that felt both ironic and deeply right. Sophia and Lucas bloomed too. Without the shadow of their cousin's perceived superiority hanging over them, their confidence soared. Sophia's dance recitals were attended by people who genuinely celebrated her success. Lucas's science fair projects were praised for their creativity, not compared unfavorably to his cousin's achievements. One Saturday morning, 6 months after the airport incident, Sophia asked me a question that confirmed I'd made the right choice. "Mommy," she said, helping me make pancakes, "I don't feel sad about Grandma and Grandpa anymore." "Is that bad?" I turned off the stove and knelt to her level. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Well," she considered, wise beyond her years, "they didn't make us feel good. And now we're happier. That's okay, right?" I pulled her into a tight hug, tears pricking my eyes. "Yes, baby. That's more than okay." The final confrontation came during the holiday season. I was leaving the grocery store when I literally ran into my mother. She looked older, tired, the strain of recent events evident on her face. "Becca," she gasped, reaching for me. "Please, we need to talk. Your father's business. Ashley's situation, we need family now more than ever." I stepped back, keeping her at arm's length. "No, Mom. You need someone to bail you out. That's not the same thing as needing family. How can you be so cold? After everything we've done for you. I laughed, genuinely amused. Everything you've done for me? You mean like telling me to my face that you love Ashley's kids more than mine? Or lying to get me to leave my children behind? Or maybe you mean all those times you helped Ashley financially while telling me to figure things out on my own? We're still your parents. No, I said firmly, you're not. You're just people who happened to raise me. And not particularly well. I started to walk away, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Mom? I'm doing great. My kids are thriving. My business is successful. And I did it all without you. The look of shock on her face was the last expression I ever saw from her. I walked away, head held high, pushing my shopping cart toward my car where Sophia and Lucas were waiting with Nathan. That evening, we had a small Christmas celebration, just me, my kids, Nathan, and a few close friends. As I watched Sophia and Lucas open their presents, their faces lit with genuine joy, I realized something profound. We hadn't just escaped a toxic family situation, we'd created something beautiful in its place. A month later, I heard through mutual friends that my parents had been forced to sell their house to cover legal fees. Ashley had moved to a small apartment, her luxury lifestyle a thing of the past. Their carefully constructed world of appearances and pretense had crumbled completely. But I was too busy living to care. My law practice had doubled in size, focusing on helping families navigate complex financial fraud cases. Sophia had been selected for an advanced dance program, and Lucas had discovered a passion for coding. Nathan and I had found a comfortable co-parenting rhythm that put our children's well-being first. One evening, as I sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Sophia curled up next to me. "Mommy," she said thoughtfully, "are we a small family now?" I hugged her close. "No, sweetheart. We're just the right size. And more importantly, we're real." Later that night, I found an old family photo that had slipped behind a drawer, the one from that last Christmas, where we were pushed to the edge of the frame. I took one last look at it, then dropped it in the recycling bin. We weren't on the edges anymore. We were the center of our own story, and it was a much better one. Life moved forward. Spring turned to summer, and our family, small but mighty, grew stronger each day. The kids stopped asking about their grandparents and aunt. The void left by my parents and Ashley was filled with genuine love, laughter, and the kind of unconditional acceptance I'd always wanted for my children. My final act of closure came when I received notice that my parents were moving out of state, following the complete collapse of my father's business. Ashley had already relocated, chasing a fresh start far from the ruins of her former life. I didn't feel vindicated or triumphant. Instead, I felt free. Free from the weight of their expectations, free from the constant comparison, free from the endless cycle of hoping for love that would never come. Standing in my office 1 year after that fateful day at the airport, I looked at the wall where I'd hung my children's artwork, bright, beautiful, and prominently displayed. No more edges, no more shadows, no more settling for less. Sometimes, I whispered to myself, the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a knife, it's the truth about your own family. I smiled, adding silently, and sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in winning the fight, but in choosing to walk away and build something better. We had done exactly that. We had built something better, a family founded on love, respect, and truth. And that was worth more than any inheritance, any social status, any false family loyalty. We were happy. We were whole. We were free.